Audience, anybody who would like to speak, 3 minutes, name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Alex Pico. My address is 6 Teachers Turn. And I know that I only have 3 minutes to speak, so if you don't mind, I'm going to hand out some copies of my presentation that goes into a little bit more detail. So if you don't mind passing. So in the summer of 2019, I attended the University of Connecticut's Conservation Ambassador Program, and as a part of my participation in this program, I am doing a capstone project called Say No to Styrofoam, in an attempt to make Simsbury a greener community. And so I will be presenting this project at the upcoming Connecticut Conference on Natural Resources in March at UConn. So basically the goal of my project is to end the use of styrofoam in the Simsbury cafeterias and to replace styrofoam with other more environmentally friendly materials because there are numerous health and environmental risks. For example, the FDA consistently finds the chemical styrene in styrofoam trays when they test them, and I actually sent our styrofoam trays to the Center for Environmental Health in San Francisco, and I'm awaiting on results from them about what specific chemicals are actually in our trays. And styrene was marked as a carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Also, when foods of a certain high temperature are placed directly onto styrofoam trays, the styrene can actually leach into it, and students can inadvertently pick up styrene just by scraping on the trays with plastic utensils. In addition, there are environmental risks to this. So since styrene is made from non-renewable fuel, it is the 5th worst industry for hazardous waste production. And also it is not biodegradable, so once it is thrown out and it reaches the landfill, it will be there forever, pretty much. Also, just the district alone, we produce about 2 tons of styrofoam trays per year, and that stacks up to about 2,300 feet, which is 1.6 times the height of the Empire State Building, and that's really just our district. So if you think all of just Connecticut combined, that's so much styrofoam that's not necessarily, that it doesn't have to be put into the environment unnecessarily. In addition, when garbage companies collect our styrofoam waste, they incinerate it and it releases all of those harmful chemicals into the air. There are actually alternatives to solve this problem, both reusable and disposable alternatives. The reusable alternatives consist of polypropylene baskets or stainless steel trays, and even though there's a big investment up front, the economics are better than you think because you don't have to keep restocking your supply after that initial investment since they're reusable. However, that solution might not work for our school district considering the turnaround time for lunch waves in the middle school and high school because there might not be enough time to wash all of those trays. But for disposable options, there are molded fiber baskets or paper boats, and even though those cost $4,000 more than the styrofoam that we use now, the question that we have to ask is $4,000 worth ensuring that our students aren't eating off of trays that we know are laced with carcinogens? So other cities in the country have started this initiative, like New York City, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. And since Simsbury has sought to lead us in fronts like this, we might as well do the same with this issue. And I've actually been circulating a petition around homerooms and just my classes at school, and in about a week and a half I've gotten over 200 signatures, and there is very strong student support. I haven't felt any resistance. Everybody that I proposed that petition to has signed it. And so I ask of you that we bring together different representatives from the district and the town to evaluate the effectiveness of different solutions, because it can really help to make Simsbury a greener place, ensure the health of our students and the health of our environment. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. This is really impressive. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yes.
Sounds like it was a great experience for you.
Yes, it's been really good.
Have you been able to share this at school at all?
Yeah, I give a little presentation when I go around to homerooms because I want to make sure that the kids are informed as well. I think that's just as important as all of you. And I'm just really hoping that this can be made possible because don't like to see when our environment is getting hurt unnecessarily. So that's the main idea.
Thank you very much for being
Did you talk to anybody in food service at all? Or?
Yes, I contacted Lori Lascarbo.
Okay.
That's where I got all of my data from, the annual price, and that's how I calculated the prices of hypothetically what it would be for molded fiber trays. So currently it's about $4,000 for styrofoam, and it would be about double that for molded fiber.
Is it just the high school that uses?
Well, the elementary schools use reusable trays because they don't have those lunch waves like we do. So they do have dishwashers and there's time. But in the new renovation for the middle school, the dishwasher wasn't included. So that obviously wouldn't be possible for reusable trays. And the high school always uses styrofoam regardless of whether it's a half day or not.
So it's that much waste from those two buildings?
Yeah.
I would just like to point out, too, that this was a great introduction to a capstone experience for a high school student. Because it clearly identified an area of interest, did a tremendous amount of research, wrote, I'm sure, a summary of it, but put it together in a presentation. So that's an introduction to what capstone experiences will look like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Alex, I have a question. In your research, were you able to find out what other school districts are?
Yes, I actually spoke to the city councilman of Norwalk. They already enacted a ban, a town-wide ban, not just their school district, on styrofoam, and that comes into effect this April. So I spoke with him just to talk about if he felt any community resistance, if there was trouble putting that ban in place. But for the most part, he felt that most of the community was on board, so they were able to ban both styrofoam and plastic straws.
So I also think it's a great idea, and I think for us it would be something, like you said, to consider, because a lot of towns are doing it, and as well as workplaces are starting to get rid of straws. And I know in my travels, as you mentioned, you can go into Dunkin' Donuts and Jamba, and they've got paper straws, and some of our restaurants already have done it. So, you know, hopefully we'll do something. Great job.
It came up last night at the Board of Selectmen. We've been talking about it. Somebody presented and asked about banning plastic straws in the local businesses, and we've been talking about including styrofoam in that too. So then we would hope if we banned it in the restaurants, it would also apply to the schools.
So we could put a ban in place at the town level that the businesses have to abide by?
yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
realize
yeah.
that.
I mean,
I thought it was corporate decisions. I didn't realize
you can
could do
make
that.
it like optional, like to. I don't know all the ins and outs. I just know it's come up a couple
You can,
times.
though. You can. I mean, some places have done that.
All right.
So
That's
I'll give the
really broader
example,
from what
just
you just
just
said.
stretch one more time. I mean, I was in, last year I traveled to South Africa, and they actually banned occupants of their mall from using plastic, straws, bags, the whole thing. So it can be done.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Clearly, you have our interest.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks so much. Well done. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at public audience?
About any subject?
About any subject, yeah.
Great. Yes.
We also have public audience at the end as well.
Well, I got 3 sick kids.
Well, then you don't want to stop.
I'm sick too, sorry. But, I was a little bit late to the survey that came out last week, and I came across it today and was filling it out until I'd realized that it's...
I'm sorry, could you just state your name and
Oh, I'm
address
sorry.
for us?
Sure. My name's Jade Hoy. I live at 48 Hayes Road. My kids are at the Terrifield School there. And I spoke at the public forum November 20th or 19th, whatever. So anyway, as I was going through the survey, I realized that anybody can take it, you know, and I don't need if I need to say more words, but I will. You know, the fact that this is a large magnitude of a decision that involves lots of people and money, I would think that there should be some type of verification process, even at the base level, including a second page that at least you get to fill out your name. I mean, I'm filling out something that I got on Facebook. I'm not sure if that was the avenue in which it was dispersed, which is I don't know if that's the right way, in my opinion. Other people, some people aren't on Facebook. And so I'm not on it. And so that's why I came across, I'm on it, but I don't go onto it often. But it seems to me in this day and age, you know, with stuff that's like going on in Iowa, for instance, we would want to make sure that the results of the survey are sound, you know, and so I don't know if I need to say anything more except for, you know, my opinion of the matter is such that, you know, we had the meeting back in November, and essentially the survey is nothing more than things that were mentioned that night. And why did it take so long to get, you know, basic survey that doesn't require any type of identification now? And so I understand that you guys they need to move quickly, but, you know, putting a page 2 on that at the very least takes all but 5 minutes. You know, this is the world in which I operate, and we oftentimes secure many of our documents with the work that I do. You know, I could easily just, I don't know, so to me it's something that can be manipulated, period. And in this situation that involves, you know, such a grand decision, shouldn't we be able to feel good about knowing that it's the people of this town making that assessment, you know? And I just can't stress enough on what's going on across the country in regards to manipulations of all certain important matters. So I would urge you, I mean, because I'm kind of null and void. So I feel like we need to kind of go back and figure out, you know, issue the same survey, but with some type of verification that it's being done by the people of the town. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
it. Anybody else? All right, so we are on to board and administrative communications.
So sorry, my computer died. Just give me 1 second.
Of course it did.
Just, oh my gosh. Sorry.
Do you want us to come back to you?
Yes.
We can do that.
That'd be great.
Fine. Sharon.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Lynn?
Okay, in response to the gentleman who just spoke before, we had a communications committee meeting not too long ago, and some of the areas that came out of the communication, which I will share, we had met, and in response to the feedback of the November 20th forum that this gentleman alluded to, we decided to start the BOE Facebook page, which he also alluded to, and what kind of information would be posted on that. We also discussed review the distribution of the school facilities master plans survey, which he also alluded to, and I also had gotten questions and some calls about numerous times that someone can apply to answer the survey. So that was something that that he had mentioned, and it's also something that I've heard, and maybe other people, board members, have heard also. And so we also discussed holding the Board of Education meetings over the course of the year. The next one will be at Latimer Lane School, and that will be on February 27th. And we also discussed, and Wendy, you might be interested in this too, the use of the news and announcements alerts that are sent from the town-wide website. We haven't done that in the past, and that's something that we felt as a communications committee from the Board of Education, this would be an important avenue of information to residents and townspeople. So more to come on that. I believe the survey closes next week on the 20th. So for those at home watching, if you have not completed the survey, by all means, please do so. You have a week to complete that, and we are looking forward to all the responses after that date. So quickly, just bear with me.
Yeah, while we're on the survey, that was going to be part of my update.
Right.
So
Go right
I'm
ahead.
sorry the gentleman had his sick children and needed to leave, because I would have liked to address it. But so the survey is out there, and successfully launched, and we've had over 900 parents and community members respond to it, and the staff response is over 150 in the couple of days that we've had it out there. You do have to make a choice when you put, I mean, basically it's an opinion survey. So while decisions are going to lead to it, it's about getting a snapshot in time, and you chose the Google format, the Google platform, to kind of get a quick turnaround answer on the options, and it's really a very narrow question of where people view kind of the 6th grade, whether that belongs. The options present keep it at the elementary school, create a 5-6 school, or add 6th grade to the middle school. So in a sense, it's a very narrow opinion survey, and you do have to make a choice when you put it out on the Google platform to get the quick turnaround. You can protect it to only one email can answer it, but it requires then for the person who's receiving the survey, if they don't have a Google account, to create one. And we saw that as an obstacle that some people who answered the survey weren't going to want to do. And the other thing that brings in, I mean, there is a confidentiality, because if you link an email to a survey answer now, so we made a conscious choice about, what we were going to do with the survey, believing that getting it out there and getting a 2-week response was the better way to go in terms of what it is ultimately as an opinion survey, and what the data is going to come back and be presented publicly and shared with this board and shared with the facilities and enrollment task force. So I'll certainly reach out to the gentleman who spoke tonight and talk a little bit about this tomorrow. But I did, since you were addressing the survey again, I thought I'd go out of turn if people don't mind.
And I just think it's important to note that it did go out via listserv through the town, as well as the school listserv accounts. So it was not just a Facebook survey. And I feel like that might have gotten lost a little bit in the comments. So I just do want to make sure that anybody who is watching does understand that we are not now relying solely on Facebook as a communications tool. We are using it in addition to, and the link is available on our website.
Good.
Sorry, Lynn. We all hijacked your report.
No, that's all right. But no, the comments that people I've known that have answered have been very satisfied, with the questions. They were very succinct to what the public forum had discussed, or the responses there. So that was good. People were very, very satisfied with the questions. I was recently in Washington, just got back, and this is my annual trek every year with, as you know, I'm on the board of directors of the National School Board Association, so we do the January trek to Washington because it is always the start of the congressional session. So I had board meetings, but also we had an equity symposium that we have every year. This is our 3rd year of providing this equity symposium. We had 500 school board members, superintendents, and education attend this. The theme this year was identifying and eradicating discriminatory practices, prejudices, and beliefs in education policy. And we had great speakers, great sessions and things. I'd be happy to talk to fellow board members about this later. But this is an important thing that we've held every year in DC, because we've had speakers from DC come to speak on this. One thing that we talked about in the increase of equity is the opportunity, the guide to ESSA, and this is an increasingly important. On the NSBA website, you can get these different guides that we produce that are out there for public education. We also had a back-to-back institute, the Advocacy Institute, and that is our preview to the Day on the Hill. And we had several speakers and sessions about public advocacy on behalf of school boards and children in the United States and in public education. This year we were unable to have any senators or congresspeople come speak to us because they were involved in the impeachment proceedings. So we had to make do with other people. But and also we had the Undersecretary of State who came to speak because the Undersecretary of Education, the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, was unavailable to come speak to us, so we had him come speak with us. And some of the priorities that we pushed forward as we spent the day on the Hill, we had not had a chance to meet with any of our congressional delegation because many of them were involved in the impeachment. And of course that night it was also the State of the Union, so it was quite an unusual day.
The timing was off.
Yeah, the timing was off. Not that we, could do anything about that. But we were able to catch a glimpse of Congresswoman Johanna Hayes for a brief 5 seconds as she was in between moving, so we had a discussion with her. And we do have, our CABE delegation has a very good relationship with our congressional delegation, which is really important, so we sit on the same page and what we're doing. So some of the priorities that we're pushing forward, and these are coming up every single year, but it's the full funding for IDEA, the Higher Ed Act reauthorization. The improving the nation's infrastructure is something that is important because it's about the rebuilding of American schools. And there are many acts that are before Congress in this area, from speed broadband to digital equity connections. So these are some of the things that haven't been brought forward, but they are coming to the forefront now. And of course, advancing school safety is something that we met with staff from the congressional delegation, and these are questions that they asked us about since we're representing the school districts. So these are some of the areas. Stay tuned. It's going to be a very interesting year. We don't expect any really big congressional decisions coming through in the education forefront, because after all, it is an election year, and so right now things are just going to be basically at a standstill. The one thing in the president's budget is that there's going to be a slight increase for the full funding for IDEA, and but other than that, many of the programs are just going to be merged into block grants. So that was kind of not what we wanted to hear, but we did hear that. So so that's what was going on there. A couple of little things. It's Support Public Schools. We have a media campaign with CABE from February 1st to 15th. You got a few more days. Public Schools Week is February 24th through 28th, so show your support for your local public schools. Day on the Hill is on March 11th here in Hartford, as our state legislature is convened. And then next week is the legislative breakfast on February 20th. So we will be there, and Matt will be there, I will be there, and so we will have a meeting with our senators and representatives, and you know, take it from there in terms of what's going on for public education in the state of Connecticut. So that's my report.
Thank you. It's a bad seat, Jen.
Bad seat. Okay, so I have nothing so formal to say. I had the privilege of going to the curriculum meeting this week. I never have anything to say, but now I do. And it was awesome. We went to Central School, and there were second grade teachers there, a fourth grade teacher there, there was world language people there. And what they're doing over there is, like, I was amazed, and you would like to hear my report, because
I'm loving it.
They're doing, they took this summer and correct me if I'm wrong, but they, on their own time during the summer, went and did a book club for Being the Change, which is the book that Erin's holding, and are implementing some of the writings and teachings in that book into their classroom currently. So, like, some things are being done about whether it's through, they showed us these graphs where kids could write on a piece of paper of like a web of what things that they identify with, and what do they likes or dislikes, or even their nationalities, and then compare that to other kids and how that works together, or things you have in common. And it was amazing to see. Even the second graders were doing stuff that I thought, I was just blown away. I was so sort of happy, because I know we haven't seen sort of tangible, we talked about this the last board meeting, like sort of tangible things that people are bringing into the classroom, and this was like right there. The new books, they talked about the new books that the kids have. I actually stole some and went and purchased them from my home library afterwards for my kids. And we did talk about, is there a way to...
and purchased?
I stole the idea. Okay, I stole the idea. It wasn't my idea. I just used their information. But they were... we talked about hopefully getting a way for families to get some of that information, because I think more families in Simsbury would like to be able to include those in their home libraries. We also talked about the world language program, and the world language program is going well so far. It started with 4th grade now.
So we're talking about elementary world language program.
We're elementary 4 through 6, that new program. It sounds like it's going very well. There's a handbook that will be presented.
I'm good for something.
Carol Merrill
Can't say anything out of wrong. So, I thought it was amazing, and the world language people even talk about like the diversity in the classroom and how to tie things in through the different language, which I thought was pretty awesome. I thought it was neat. I never saw that side before, so I was really excited about it. One thing that, in the future, sometime down the line, we'd love, or it got brought up that maybe it would be something that we eventually could move down further into like kindergarten or 1st grade and to have the languages there. But that's for a different day, but it's out there. Okay.
Who's getting these?
Parents, that's a parent.
It's a parent resource? So as the kids start this?
That was given at the beginning of the school year, made available.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they're using the new platform. That great platform.
EduPlanet 21, the curriculum platform, and they'll be doing more of that this summer. So
see, I was fired up. I thought it was great. I loved Central School. It was really good. I get there and it was awesome.
You're making Beth really happy.
I should go. I got to go out more to see more schools. It was great.
I think the point too that you mentioned, 17 teachers took it on as a summer book read, and what they did to build their literacy around the work of creating equitable conditions and helping students begin to learn who they are themselves, so that they can see themselves as a part of the world around them, which also supports the vision of the graduate global citizen. So starting what Nancy was able to tell us that was happening in 2nd grade and what Laurel was able to tell us and happening in 4th grade, it was really remarkable. It really was great work. So
that's great.
Yeah.
It was something. I was like the whole time. I was like, I got to tell us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you think I think, but I know we're doing great stuff.
Yes.
I know we're doing great stuff. It's all over the place. What I don't know is that everybody else knows.
That's correct.
Right.
Yes.
What we're doing, and it's presentations like this that lets people know what we're doing it. And when something like this is as successful and energizes people, that other places take that and do it if there's any books left.
Yeah.
I
just ordered a few, so I can give you one.
Maybe you can give us all the books. I know we're doing stuff.
No, I know.
And it's to make sure that other people know and that we're looking at these issues, we're serious, and we're addressing them.
It was awesome. I think I couldn't wait for this meeting today because I think he is right that people don't realize, and it was.
Well, I don't know if people realize, but it's our job to make sure that they do.
Right. Yeah. And I think, Todd, what was quite interesting, Amy Klebart, who's the department supervisor for world language, was in the meeting as they were giving their presentation. She hadn't seen the book. Her interest was piqued. It's that kind of collaborative. It's contagious.
Right.
And so so I had to come back and order new books because I want to share it with other people as well. So.
Yeah, it'd be great to highlight something like that on the website, or even use the Facebook page to kind of communicate.
Great idea. Book list.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that
book list, right?
It'd be great.
Would be great to do.
It'd be great.
That's it.
That's it. Boy, that was a tough act to follow.
It was, I know.
Mr. Tyndall.
I feel like I got more homework coming. Hey, just wanted to mention briefly that we obviously had a facilities and enrollment meeting since our last meeting here. I thought we had a really great meeting, to be honest with you. First, I heard some feedback that we had some technical difficulties, and I take that as that's solely my fault. I just don't think the folks were working the microphones as much as they should. So anybody who had that difficulty I greatly apologize for that. But we had our Tecton partners out there that gave us a few additional options to look at out there. We spent a lot of time talking about the survey, as well as going over a bunch of the same questions we've spoken about tonight. We went through the calendar really, let's say, through the end of May, I guess, and included there, if we need it, is the opportunity for another survey. So this is not like the last shot if we see anything that arises from it. But what I liked the most was it seemed we focused a lot more than we have. I appreciate Matt and Neil really steering us towards where we're heading and thinking about the immediate needs versus the longer term goals, and not letting some of those longer term goals paralyze us from starting, getting our work going. So we have another meeting at the end of February. Right now we are going to the schools themselves, which I think is great, getting different and very exciting feedback from everybody. That's happening right now. I think we met with 2.
Yep, Tooten Hills and Latimer.
Yep, and the rest are scheduled, so
and
that's
good turnouts
happening.
at both schools,
Great.
which was nice to see.
Yeah. So, a lot going on with this. It's very exciting. I don't know if you guys want to say that.
Just to highlight the remaining dates, so Tooten Hills and Latimer had their meetings last week. Great crowds, highly successful. So the other meetings, one this week will be Friday morning at Squadron Line at 9 a.m. And then the other 2 are evening meetings next week will be at Central School starting at 6 p.m. on Wednesday the 19th and at Terriffville at 6 p.m. on Thursday the 20th. So that's all I was going to add.
Great.
Is Terriffville's also at 6?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm writing. I can't do 2 things at once.
Nothing this evening.
Well, way to tease that
out. I went out of turn twice, so I'm all set.
We have early release on Friday the 14th, and they're building-based days. I can tell you at the elementary level, there's going to be some work around reading, K2 focus, a high focus there. Some conversation around the SBAC, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, that's upcoming in the spring to get prepared, so prep for that. And then equity work, a variety of different kinds of conversations happening across all 5 schools. In fact, Latimer Lane is having Art Miller, who will be working with the faculty on that afternoon. So that's at the elementary. At the middle school, it's their annual chili cook-off. Right, Scott?
Are we invited?
So that will be before the conversation where the initial review of the homework survey data that has come in to the middle school. So they'll have an opportunity as a faculty to analyze the data and begin conversations with that. So more to come, but that will be a busy afternoon, I think, for Henry James. And then the high school will continue to do their work around Vision of the Graduate, the passion projects that they're working on that certainly support the global citizen competency, but also integrate the other 5 competencies as well.
Great. Thank you.
On the Henry James, is the survey the parents and students?
Students, parents, and teachers, all 3.
Right.
Okay.
Almost 300 parent
Oh, wow.
That's great.
Wow, that is a great return.
And I've asked Jason to be here this evening. Jason was with us at our workshop last week. And he's got a couple slides to go through and provide for us an update on the Henry James construction project. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One clarification. What was the survey for at a Henry
Homework
James?
survey.
Homework survey.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the good news about the Henry James construction project is we are on schedule and on budget.
That's good.
The project is approximately 61% complete. In contingencies and allowances, they have, as of this morning, $2.26 million left. The construction manager is comfortable with that number. And I'll go through the schedule point by point. So phase 1 is completed. There's a picture of a newly created science classroom there. You'll notice the large size of the room. It's created by taking 2 rooms and blowing a wall out. Down at the end where that projector is, one interesting thing on those walls, the entire wall is basically a whiteboard, can be written on in the entire area. On the left side is an eye wash station. It is a science classroom. So phase 2 We're looking to wrap up end of February. This is a view of the LMC. If you were to be walking in from the hallway, if you came in the main entrance and took a right, so the circulation desk would be roughly where that mobile lift is sitting right now. If you walked into the circulation desk and then took a left turn, you'd be looking over at where the seminar room, makerspace, workspace will be. So this is coming along nicely.
And that's all going to be done the end of February?
End of February, yes. The structure will be complete the end of February, and then the actual shelving units coming in at the end of March. So they'll be
ready for use. Maybe April.
Yeah, beginning.
That'll be fine. Okay.
Yep. All right. Phase 3, by the end of April, we'll see the auditorium up and running. So this is a view from the back of the room looking at the stage. If you were up closer to the stage and looking back, this is the area where the light board, soundboard will be. A projector will also be up in that area at the top there. The phase will be complete at the end of May with some more classrooms. Phase 4, end of June. And then Phase 5, the family and consumer science area in the gymnasium, will round out the construction with substantial completion happening mid-August and the final completion date being September 22nd.
That's great. It's great to see. Thank you very much for that.
Very cool.
And Scott, just want to commend you, the kids, the faculty for the flexibility. You know, when we talk about this large-scale study we're in now and talk about renovate as new concepts versus build, there's a lot to be considered about the disruption of a site, right? And it certainly has its challenges. You've made it a wonderful learning experience for the kids as well, and we appreciate that, Scott.
Yeah, we're on our second round. We're going to do 3 times to make sure all students have a chance to walk through of the site, so that the construction managers are bringing them around and showing them what's what as it's under construction.
Very cool.
So you're coming up on the last of the classrooms being released to you this month?
What was that?
The last of the classrooms are going to be released to you this month?
About 5 classrooms we're going to get this month, and then more. It's in stages.
Okay. Okay. Well, we love your Instagram page. It's great.
Thanks.
Okay. So then, back to Kate. Sorry.
Nope,
I didn't forget.
Fine. All right. All right. So, as the Simsbury Public Schools community continues to expand the work of the district facilities and enrollment task force remains highly important, a series of neighborhood meetings have been scheduled during the first 2 weeks, as you've mentioned already, where people have the opportunity to provide input on the most recent options provided by the Tecton architects for our facilities master plan. At Tooten Hills, the annual Tooten Hills Pasta Night will be Tuesday, March 3rd at 5 o'clock, and 6:30 where they will be joining together for a night of community building and support for the grade 5 students trip to Camp Jewel. This year's Relay for Life of Farmington Valley will be held the weekend of May 16th and 17th. They reached a new milestone this past year with the help of 5th and 6th graders and their families from Tooten Hills Elementary School. In 2019, Relay held in May raised $633,000 to support the work of the American Cancer Society, and the 30 students and families from Tooten raised nearly $12,000, which is a significant contribution to the total. On Friday, February 14th, grade 6 is going to be having a basketball game versus their staff. And on Thursday, February 27th, Tooten will be celebrating Dr. Seuss's birthday with some therapy dog friends and special guest reader, Officer Cushman. At Terrafil, they've had a busy week as the 6th graders participated in a Chinese New Year celebration hosted by the Simsbury High School Chinese language students. They put together an exciting event with songs, dances, and activities for students to enjoy. At the middle school, students participating in clubs and activities were involved in creating and displaying boards for the 6th grade open house. These boards will provide parents with information on the myriad of extracurricular activities offered at Henry James. On Wednesday, February 5th, Simsbury Public Schools participated in the World Read Aloud Day, and high school students who wanted to participate were bused to different elementary schools and read a chosen book and led a discussion with students while dressed as any of their favorite characters. And as a part of their community service projects, the choice students from National Art Honor Society have been paired with older members of the community to paint chairs that were made by tech ed students, which will be placed throughout the town once they are finished.
Great. Thank you.
John?
Perfect. All right, so now we are on to recommended actions. Approval of the January 14th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
January 14th, January
Should be
28th.
28th.
Sorry, I just looked at that, January 28th. Sorry. Okay. So, Sharon, you gave me a motion.
I move.
I motion.
You motion.
And I'm second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Lydia. Okay. Thank you. February 5th workshop minutes. Can you get a motion on that?
I'll move to accept.
And second, point of discussion on page 2. Just there's a paragraph, Mr. Curtis, the capital non-recurring fund. There's just a word missing. Okay. And other than that, anybody else have anything? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving forward. Personnel.
So just one action tonight, it's a retirement. You'll see on your exhibit, it's Michelle Martin. We call her Shelley Martin. She was a very experienced elementary school teacher who actually moved to this area a few years ago. My first year in this job, she started substitute teaching. And every time I walked in, elementary teachers would stop me and say, "You have to hire this woman. She's amazing." So eventually, after a couple of long-term sub situations, Meg Evans got the chance to hire Shelley at Squadron Line right before the start of a school year. So this is not one of those stories about a long career in Simsbury, but a powerful one in the 3 years that Shelley was with us, and will retire at the end of this year after a long career in some other places and a short but powerful career with us.
Can I get a motion on that, please?
Move that the Board of Education accept the retirement of Michelle Martin effective June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Acceptance of gift from Ensign Bickford.
So as we all remember, 2 weeks ago, Ensign Bickford was here donating $10,000 this year, but $10,000 for the next 3 years. So wanting to put some clarity around the motion, we're asking the Board of Ed to move to accept $10,000 for the next 3 years from Ensign Bickford. Their connection with us has just been outstanding and will continue to be, and will broaden across the entire district.
Absolutely.
Great. I'll move that the Ensign Bickford Aerospace Defense Company gift of $30,000 over 3 years to fund STEM programs be accepted.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much to Ensign Bickford.
Yes, thank
It's
you.
a wonderful partnership. Next up is completed school building projects.
Yes. I will take that one. Obviously, an important part of any project that is passed at referendum is the official closeout of that project. So that requires a board motion. Dave Holden has been helping us with a couple of these closeouts that Burke was working on. So we're excited to bring before you tonight 2 projects that had occurred in the past. One is the Central School roof replacement. The other was the Henry James Phase 2. We've kind of put the Phase 1 and Phase 2 together as David's been working with the state. So in all, This motion, once we get it filed, will allow reimbursement to come back to the town of Simsbury of a little bit over $700,000. So that's of great benefit through the reimbursable dollars. So I would ask that the board read the motion as it is in the exhibit, and then we can file the final piece of this puzzle, and the town can receive the funding.
Sure, I'll move that the Simsbury Board of Education accept as complete the Central School Roof Replacement Project. Do you need me to read the actual project number?
No, that's okay.
And the Henry James Phase 2 project, and authorizes the acceptance of the school building grants.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And the adoption of the 6-year capital improvement plan.
All right, so we've had, obviously, these two projects on the agenda at several board meetings, and Jason presented to us at length at the workshop last week. So the two projects are the removal and the rebuilding of the bleachers at Holden Field, and district technology improvements via district network infrastructure, which is an ongoing every other year capital expenditure that we've worked into our plan. So by charter, actually, the board needs to kind of formally accept where we are in this process. We're a little bit ahead of where the Board of Selectmen are, so there's still going to be more conversation, as we say, between upstairs and downstairs as to what will fit in that threshold with the Board of Selectmen as they kind of finalize and present their projects as well, recognizing that last year the Board of Ed had a very, last time a very large project. Yep. So.
Okay, so can we get a motion first?
Move that the Board of Education 6-year capital improvement plan for the period 2021 through 2026 be adopted.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
If something changes because of what the town does, then we have to revote.
Yeah, we'll have an opportunity to rediscuss, and it's always really important to know we have this 6-year plan, right, that we've all kind of talked about trying finding ways to improve the process. It's really a 1-year plan in terms of what the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed really moved to referendum on, and there's a lot of movement in those out years on the plan. But yes, to respond to your question.
Okay, so any changes downstairs, it'll be bounced back to us to look at.
Yes, and in the end, the Board of Selectmen approves.
Right, because we go to the Board of Selectmen, and then the Board of Selectmen's
Correct.
final approval on capital projects go to the Board of Finance for
You got
anybody
it.
who doesn't know.
Correct.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to information and reports.
All right.
2021 budget.
2021 budget. So, tonight I get an opportunity to kind of wrap up what has been several months of work on the budget front. So first, I do want to thank all the administrative team that came out tonight, because they certainly have a lot of stake in the game here in terms of when we kick off this process, and I'll talk about the process in a bit, do a great deal of work at the building and the program level to get us where we are tonight. So Sue's gonna, as is tradition, flip through for me.
I'm here for you.
All right, Sue. So really, I know the board is familiar with this, but I did want to take an opportunity for those that may be watching at home to give a little bit more to the process that we go through, because there are quite a few steps along the way. So we do begin this process in November with that important 3-board meeting, that tri-board meeting, where we did receive guidance from the Board of Finance, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. In December, we came before the board and really talked about just kind of our main drivers and fixed costs, really salary items, contractual items, and benefits. Building principals and program directors in that November-December time frame at their buildings really take a look at the line item accounts that they're responsible for from the previous year. We provide them information on dollars spent, and they start to make decisions based on needs they have in their building, and they really put together a comprehensive review of those things. And they, over a couple-week period, we meet with all the administrators, and they present to our central office team really what they feel they need to move their buildings forward in a productive way. And it's an important opportunity for principals and leaders to shape their vision for the future. So in December, we come back with more discussion on what we call fixed costs and those major drivers. And then we move it forward to January, where we had a couple large-scale presentations. Sue talked about special education, and Neil did a large-scale presentation on staffing and enrollment. And that's where we really recognize, in terms of organization and dollars spent, 80% of our operating budget is in people, either in salaries or in benefits. So when we, and a lot of those, as we'll see, are fixed contracts. So as we talk about where we can find savings and really take a look at doing things in a different way, which was our workshop conversation last week, it's a small amount of dollars that we have to really look at. February, we had the workshop. We really dug into the line items. We dug into the grants, thought we had a really healthy dialogue on where we're up to that point, and that brings us up to tonight. So the total budget we'll be presenting to the Board of Ed for consideration is $72,384,831. It represents an increase of a little bit over $1.5 million from the prior year spending, which is a 2.12% increase. So as we go through this process and really think about how to articulate how we got where we are, there's always contextual factors that we need to respond to. So one of the topics that's been shifting over time is our enrollment, right? We have an interesting enrollment fluctuation going on in the district. I have a slide later on from one of Neil's presentations that denotes that, but we have kind of a rapidly increasing elementary enrollment, smaller cohorts moving through the high school level, but all in all, it's pretty balanced right now, where in years past, as board members know, we had seen a significant decline in enrollment. The guideline provided by the Board of Finance and to the Board of the Selectmen was a 2.5% increase and a desire to keep the mill rate under 40. On the Board of Education side and on the administrative side, we need to think about how we move forward our strategic plan and improve programs. So there's always considerations there, how we support our strategic priorities. And then the last piece is a little bit complicated. We'll kind of talk through it at the end, but that is the pension assumption rate that the Board of Finance in their purview would like us to shift, which you will see will really kind of increase the challenge of trying to meet that guideline as it well, for the Board of Selectmen as they go and move their budgets forward. So all in all, we try to balance all these different priorities. In terms of the fiscal climate, we need to consider what's going on. I have to say it's really, for folks that have been through this, one of the first years that there is not significant at the onset drama at the state level in terms of the budget and discussion of potential loss of our educational cost share grant. That's a real positive. In fact, early estimates have come out that we're going to see an increase in our educational cost share grant of a couple $100,000. Those dollars go right to the town. But there always is that topic, and it's a couple bullets down, of the teacher pension, teacher and administrative pension liability that sits at the state and the uncertainty and the solvency of that fund. Hasn't come up in conversation yet. Wouldn't surprise me if it does come up for us to consider. But really excited about what this budget does support. We think it supports our outstanding academic programming. In terms of not only some additions, but really maintenance and protection of those programs. Class size guidelines are important community value and important to our educators, so we look to support that. Certainly the enrollment trends. We have some educational staffing that supports the social and emotional well-being of our kids, and some of the other things I'll talk about as we move forward. Certainly this opportunity with Amy and collaboration with the town is something we've been looking for over time, and that opportunity has presented itself, and she's certainly done a great job and been a benefit to us so far. Excited about working with her. So a little comparative data. Per pupil expenditure, this is an audited number. It's one of the few numbers on the financial side that allows us kind of a apples to apples look across districts. And the Board of Finance often inquires about this number, so we put it out front as part of our budget presentation. You can see a slight increase year over year. It's a lagging data point. I have a cough drop. I apologize. I'm smacking it around. Yeah. It's lagging data in terms of year over year, so it looks at last year's expenditures. And actually, when I was talking to our budget analyst, this is the smallest increase percentage-wise we've had in several years in the per pupil expenditure. The main reason for that is it's really an enrollment-driven statistic, and as our enrollment has stabilized, if we continue to make fiscally prudent decisions, we should be able to minimize those increases, and from a comparative standpoint, that can help. I put some peer communities down to show that we're in similar ballparks with those communities, and put a little budget history down to remind people that this board, as all the boards in town have really done, I believe, a great job over the last decade of really scrutinizing expenditures and keeping increases to a minimum. I won't spend a great deal on the enrollment projections. This is actually the slide I pulled from Neil's presentation, but it demonstrates how we project actually a flat enrollment for the year, but you can see the different trends between K-6, where we see a projected increase of 57 students, and 9-12, where we see a decrease of about the same number of students. Down below the bullet's important, and this is what we're trying to respond to in our facilities and enrollment work, is that we have a challenge. We have an immediate challenge that we're going to see several hundred more students in the next few years that we need to find seats for, either through modifications to our facilities or redistricting. So certainly some challenges for the district to deal with. And as you know, a lot of our expenditures are enrollment driven as well, so we'll have needs that we'll have to respond to. Important information not only for the board to have, but when we move in front of the Board of Finance and talk to them too, is as our enrollment declined over time, this is a slide that represents different points in time and where we were with our overall enrollment and where we were with different categories of our staffing. So that 2008-9 year, as Neil had talked about in his presentation, was kind of a high water mark for not only enrollment, but for staffing. So if we take a look at that, of close to 700 employees, and we take a look at where we were in 1920, you can see, due to enrollment, we'd reduced almost 53 positions. One of the questions that we constantly get asked, and it's understandable, is if your enrollment decreased by 18%, why did your staffing only decrease by 7%? Why isn't there a larger decrease in staffing? And we've always talked about as a board where we feel we've made responsible reductions, but at the same time, we have reinvested quite a bit in our district through things that Neil talked about, right? Full day kindergarten, 8-period day movement, instructional coaches, social workers at the elementary level, foreign language last year. So we've improved programs over time and still been able to reduce our head count. Close to 10 FTE reduced over the last 3 budget years alone. So just wanted to bring that in front, and that will definitely be a topic of conversation as we move our presentation in front of the Board of Finance.
You said 1920, you meant 2019.
Yes, 1920. I'm dating myself.
1920, wow, okay. That would be interesting to see those facts.
We might have that data.
Yeah. Oh, we do.
Very thorough. I got it, man.
Yeah, you got it?
I understood.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, then the next 2 slides are really a reminder of what we're here to do and what it's all about, and that we have a strategic mission to carry out as a district, and that's about ensuring our kids are successful and ensuring that our students have diverse opportunities and pathways to really explore their passions. So on this slide on the left-hand side is the relatively new accountability index, they call it, which provides an outcome rating for the districts in Connecticut. It's different than how we used to look at performance across districts before, which was strictly standardized test scores. So this outcome rating has 12 data points in it that, yes, there are assessment scores in there, but there's information on achievement gap in there. There's information on physical fitness data, advanced placement opportunities for students, advanced placement performance for students, attendance challenges that we may be having. So it really gives a comprehensive review and report card of the district overall. You get a kind of macro look at the district, which this is, and you get individual breakdowns of schools. So we just received this data a couple weeks ago. Aaron will pull this back out in presentations later on to the board to really go through individual schools. Districts in our comparative group all do well. I wanted to put that up for you as a frame of reference to show you what our outcome level looks like in our community this year, and it's something that we are pretty proud of. On the right-hand side, this is a slide that I've used in past years, and I think it's an important time to bring it back out. We have new board members over the past couple years. This really represents the elective opportunities at Simsbury High School. So when people talk about the district, they talk about staffing levels, they talk about comprehensive high schools being the same. This is an area we can point to and say, no, actually, we're a little bit different. We've invested differently in our elective opportunities at Simsbury High School. These opportunities are not only in alignment with the capstone requirements that Aaron has talked about in the budget process, but also with our vision of the graduate work, right? That we're providing kids opportunities to really develop skills in those competencies and find passions and course sequences that they can follow in their time at Simsbury High School. So each of these clusters has different various sequences of courses that kids can take. The next pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So in the spirit of supporting our vision of the graduate and continuing to provide and think of new ways for our kids to experience becoming self-directed learners, collaborators, innovators, and communicators, this is just a snapshot of some of the things that are going on in our schools right now. The wonderful play at Simsbury High School. Mr. Lizzetti's here tonight, but he held an event that I informed the board on that had over 400 students and parents where it was called a World Culture Celebration, and they learned from each other and they shared experiences. People are still talking about that. Really great work that went on at Latimer Lane School. You know, some of our engineering work, but we're doing great things. And I think, you know, Todd, you mentioned before, it's our job to promote and talk about those things so people know what we value and know what we put out there for our students. Because in the end, these decisions we make about dollars and cents impact all of these things.
That play was amazing. It's shocking to me.
We were all a little remiss in not talking about that because it really was.
It was amazing.
It was very
special.
well done. Incredible.
It was special. All right. So we're going to get to the dollars and cents a little bit, which is pretty straightforward, and talking about how we came to the numbers. And the main pieces are those contractual obligations, some of the program improvements, and this piece about insurance and pension, which is a little bit different this year. We're always looking for offsets, so I'm going to talk about personnel-related reductions that we're looking at. And we always go through and look at certain larger accounts, and we shifted from kind of rolling line items forward to really looking at zero-based budgeting and kind of emptying that line item out and building it back up from the start to try to save dollars. So if we just look at personnel, this doesn't include the pension and the insurance number, and we look at the value of the 3 contracts that we have settled, which is the teacher's contract, the administrator's contract, actually 4, the nurses in our custodial group. We have one large contract that we have just begun negotiations on now, and that's with our SFEP group. That roll-up alone, if you just assume that our organization is the same size and roll it forward, is a $1.3 million increase, or almost 2%, right? 1.95%. We look at how we're going to offset that number, just from a personnel standpoint, for planning and rolling forward. And we have 5 or 6 known retirements already, and we're estimating 10 based on what we see on a year-over-year basis. So what we do there, it's a pretty simple calculation. We take that outgoing salary and we subtract a mid-level hire, and you can assume about $25,000 of savings on each new hire. So that's where we come up with that $250,000, which brings that salary kind of rollover increase to 1.6%. So the pieces of the puzzle and kind of the moving parts on personnel this year, that are important that we've talked about and that we feel the board has been supportive of and that we're moving forward kind of in this budget as administrators are the 2 elementary positions, one at Latimer Lane School, one at Squadron Line. Those are enrollment driven. Those are to respond to the enrollment influx in the primary grades and to keep class size within our guidelines. The 0.5, the half-time special education teacher at Latimer, is actually a similar situation. Latimer, as we know, is the school that is growing most rapidly. As a result, the special education population has grown in accordance, and relative to caseloads, we need more staffing to work with those kids, meet those student needs, and to support the work of the school. The one new position we're kind of formally moving forward is that high school position that will help support the capstone work that is a new requirement of the state, something we're very excited about. Ms. Murray talked about it a little bit before, kind of on the spot for you there. It's definitely tied to opportunities that we have in our learning clusters, but there's a lot of planning that needs to be done to ensure that we're ready to go, because this is going to be a graduation requirement for students in the future. And then we talk about responsible reductions. How can we offset things? So this is where we look at Simsbury High School and where the enrollment is declining. We haven't identified which 3 FTE or full-time equivalent positions we'll take at this point. That's going to be part of the course registration process. And we'll be doing that in the upcoming months. But based on what we've been able to do, we feel there's a good potential to capture 3 full-time positions there. In 2 non-certified positions is a district-wide look as students exit out of the district that may have paraprofessional support, or we receive retirements. We take a hard look at every one of those positions, and we're committing to 2. So overall, a reduction of 5 positions. The district summary is really the wrap-up of what I just talked about there. So you can see overall from an FTE count, we plan in this budget to go down a net total of 1.5 positions, which I think is very reasonable relative to the fact that our organization is staying flat in size. It is important to note, and I think in our conversations with in planning for the Board of Finance presentation, which is always a little bit different from this, we're going to work up some slides and some information to help people understand that when we move forward the budget for public consideration, that doesn't mean that that's everything that was considered and talked about. And the reality, and it came up in the budget workshop, Todd, when you asked about some of the line item costs that just roll over with the same price. For example, if a textbook line item rolled over and it was, you know, the last 3 digits were $905, do you still really need $905? The reality of that line item is that the requests were much higher. So we're going to put some information together to have for the Q&A with the Board of Finance that, hey, we feel we can move forward productively there, but a lot of work went into Aaron prioritizing those accounts and making that judgment call, and kind of lead with that information rather than wait to be asked about it, because I think it was a good point that had a lot of merit.
That we're keeping it flat, but
yeah.
But in reality, we did make tough decisions
Correct.
along the way.
Correct. And these are some of the positions and supports that were discussed with program leaders and principals as we went through that we didn't feel financially we could support at this time. But certainly as we work through, if there are elements of flexibility over the summer in the hiring process, we capture dollars through something we call realized savings. You know, do more teachers leave than we thought? Do we have more first-year hires than we normally do? Do we have flexibilities in dollars? These are conversations we can bring back to the board for consideration, and we committed to our administrators to do that. And I think that's an important part of the process. So pension and insurance is the second largest driver in the budget after the contracts and salaries. So this is just a quick snapshot year over year from where we sit today, a little bit over $13 million, in an increase of $347,000 projected in the insurance and pension line item for a total almost 0.5% of a budget increase there. So certainly a major driver, and I'm going to get into a little more of that in the next 5 minutes or so. So The last three slides here are this framework that's been pretty effective in us communicating to different audiences. It's pretty straightforward. It's how we wrap it all up and get to the end number in a pretty concise way. The top portion of this is those contracts from personnel that you've already seen, but what we've woven in are the new certified requests. So you can see there the 3.5 full-time equivalent positions added to those dollars. The employee insurance, we received new information from Amy right before our workshop, which was actually very positive information trending on our insurance. So if you'll think about this and go back to where we started in November, we had a conservative estimate of a 9% increase in insurance. It's where the Board of Selectmen started as well. That estimate's going to end up at 4%, which is significant savings in terms of the overall number. So when you saw our overall number go down from those initial fixed costs, by and large, the insurance movement. So all in all, the adds are 3.16% increase, 2.2 million. And then you see the reductions. Those are the retirements, the 5 FTE, and other line item decreases that I didn't split them all out here. They're in your line items, but it's largely the technology replacement equipment that as Jason creates his cycle, we spent more money on initial Chromebooks at the middle school last year. We don't need as much this year, but that's an account that's going to fluctuate year to year based on the need, but we're able to capture kind of on paper savings there this year. So that is where we net out at your overall increase of 2.12%. So the interesting piece of the puzzle and what we you need to think about as a board and we need to discuss when we get to the Board of Finance presentation is they requested that in our operating budget we absorb an adjustment to the pension assumption for the rate of return on the pension and the OPEB. So the fund balance there, obviously, it's an investment fund. We make actuarial assumptions based on a rate of return. That current rate of return on investment is 6.75%. They're recommending we lower that to a more conservative 6.5%. What that actually does to our operating budget, I've highlighted that $511,000, that line item there. That's up from $108,000 on the previous screen. So it's a significant shift that the Board of Finance is asking us to take a look at pulling into our operating budget. Wendy, not to speak for your budget, but it's an even more significant hit to the Board of Selectmen because of the police department in the size and scope. It's over $1 million there. So it's trying to manage and understand the guidance that was given and the reality that a decision was made by the Board of Finance for a request to pull in significant dollars back into our operating budget. So I put that here for you to take a look at, and I've proposed a way that we can potentially get there using our non-lapsing funds. So if you go down to the second highlight and you see that if we utilize the remaining portion of our non-lapsing dollars, $175,000, we would come out to a budget of a 2.44%. The piece of information that's important there is use of non-lapsing funds is not just a Board of Ed decision, it's a collective decision of the Board of Finance. So my kind of recommendation, and I've had some conversation with Rob Pomeroy, the chair of the committee on this, is that we would look at and talk about our budget as that 2.12 and have the considerations there. When we move forward and present to the Board of Finance, we would have that conversation of exactly how do we want to do this. Are they okay with us utilizing the funds this way? They want to have a different kind of conversation. That's the meeting, you know, where very often they look at reserve levels for the town. They put that wonderful chart up there and they pull the levers and really try to figure out what that mill rate will look like. So it's a complex conversation, but I guess the point I wanted to leave tonight is we're in very good shape, I believe, as a Board of Education to have a very productive conversation in that next presentation with the Board of Finance. But I think between this week's presentation and next week, when we're scheduled to vote on this, 2 weeks, I'm sorry, you really think about this. and we have some conversation about that at the table prior to the vote, because we can do things kind of one of two ways, and I know the Board of Selectmen has to figure out how we want to do that, and we want these conversations to be somewhat consistent, I think. So that's important, but I think this visualizes just how big a movement those dollars make in the budget, and that's a decision that's under the purview of the Board of Finance. And again, I'll say, we've done this 3 times, I think, or 2 times in the last 10 years. It's not something we haven't done, but we've always talked about it at the table and what's the best way to try to get there. Do you absorb it all in the operating budget? Do you offset it with some other funds?
So that's what I was going to ask you to clarify.
Yep.
The difference of $400,000 here, roughly,
Mm-hmm.
Was that normally funded out of reserves by the Board of Finance?
In the past?
Yes. For this budget.
We've done it both ways. So we did it I remember my first year where we pulled it back into the operating budget, but at the town meeting, the Board of Finance discussed the fact that they requested that we did that, and gave some context to it so that people understood.
Okay.
There's been, I think the second time we did that, the Board of Finance, the term they use is they held us harmless from the operating factor. They had extra reserves that year. They offset it, and we were able to roll it into the next year. So to my point, it's been done both ways, but it's always been a conversation amongst the board. That's why, my take is keep it consistent with what we've done in the past in terms of conversation. But the driver sheet demonstrates that we're able to get to the target either one of these 2 ways, which I think is very much a positive, and do so with a budget that we feel good about. Any questions on that? I have one more little piece. All right, so in addition to the public school budget, we have what we call a non-public school budget. We really don't give it too much airtime because it's not significant dollars in the scope of things, but it's interesting because people don't realize generally some of our responsibilities outside the scope of our public schools. So the non-public school budget consists of some shared services with the town that we have in terms of our field maintenance for the schools. Also, people don't realize that we provide, as a public school district, the nursing services and the school psych services to our private schools. So that's part of our budget on an ongoing basis. And we also provide transportation costs to the private schools. In either full transportation, like we actually bus the St. Mary's students, or mileage reimbursement, which we do for the other schools.
For Simsbury residents.
For Simsbury residents.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Correct. If the school represents over 50% of Connecticut students. So there's different parameters there, and a couple of the schools fall in and off of that. That's all statutorily driven, but it's interesting when people in my conversations ask about this and they go, really? So I think it's important to talk about. It's never a real large increase, but this year the increase in that budget line item is $4,951. All right? So the last slide is just some important dates that are upcoming in our process. The next real 3 steps are our Board of Ed meeting on the 25th. We present our capital and our operating budget to the Board of Finance on March 10th. Gives them an opportunity to ask us questions. We provide them a whole host of supplementary materials similar to what we provide you. And then on April 7th, we go to the public hearing for the capital and operating budgets.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions?
No. I have a question. Just, I know we haven't done the legwork on it, but it was really interesting what Alex presented to us in public audience. So it would be pretty cool for him and his capstone, and for us to either put an extra $4,000 in the budget to get rid of the styrofoam, or to earmark something. It'd be a nice way to kind of close it. I thought it was he presented it really well. And, maybe it's a little bit less, a little bit more.
Yeah,
but,
I was interested to see if he had talked to Lori Lascarbo. So we'll plan on following up on that conversation and kind of see where that sits. But that's something we can talk about.
Nice way to close his capstone too.
And that could potentially be a look within food service that honestly largely sits outside the operating budget, is self-sustaining. So there may be a way to look at that without impacting.
That's true.
impacting the number.
Real number.
Kayla, do you get hot lunches at the high school?
Yes. Yeah. They're they have the little paper boats in some lines, but most of it is the styrofoam trays that they use. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just maybe a comment and a question first? I feel like I'm on a radio show. Comment and a question. First, I really want to commend you and everybody over here for coming in at 2.12. That is a absolute phenomenal number, especially that the Board of Finance gave us a 2.5. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So, and I hope I'm not the only one asking this question. So I just want to make sure the Board of Education is coming underneath the Board of Finance target at 2.12, but it is the Board of Finance that is asking us to increase our budget that butts up right against their guidance number.
But still under it.
But still is under, yes.
They asked us to, I mean, in that 3-board meeting, there was not a lot of discussion for it to absorb that cost, yes, yeah. Yeah.
Just want to make sure it's clear that they are asking us to increase our budget.
Yes, they are. Anybody else? Okay, so we're not going to vote on this until our next meeting, so use the time to think about it, ask your questions.
And the line items
Wait, I'm
too,
sorry, you
like-
got something to say? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just say, that we went through the line items, there's quite a bit of information there. If you have any conversations, if it's on the personnel front, you can go to Neil direct. If it's in any other line item, let me know, and we can respond to that as well. So you feel prepared to answer any questions that people may ask of you.
Okay, since Mike Oman is no longer with us, but he
You're gonna
has
pick up the mantle?
always, for years, so I guess I have to pick up the mantle, has always, brought this up, asked about this, because this is really a very good tool for the board and also for the public to know. Is there anything in here that you want to share with us, Matt, about this, the 2-page historical data information?
I just think it's a great historical document. You know, it goes back several decades in terms of enrollment, staffing, budget increases. I think are a really interesting thing to look at in the past compared to what, you know, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed have been expected to do in the recent decade, as things have tightened. But I mean, it's just a variety of great information that helps us kind of gauge where we're at and make the best decisions we can for the community.
It's an important piece of information.
It is, yeah.
It's a very important piece.
It shows the fiscal restraint for a long time of 1% budgets.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the important piece to recognize, and we've talked about it throughout the year, the enrollment trend has shifted. So one of the reasons why, over a 10-year period, that we could come in with a very low number is we could offset quite a few dollars with positions that weren't needed because they were enrollment driven. And as that shifts, that becomes a little bit harder to do.
Right.
Right?
True. Anybody else? All right. So now we have our second public audience, if anybody would like to speak. Seeing none, we do need to adjourn to an executive session. Mr. Nagy, do you want to say something?
I think you're all doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
You don't hear that very often.
No, we don't. It's very nice to hear.
Yes.
We appreciate it. You can come anytime.
Thanks for staying.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Motion to go to executive session, yes?
I'll move. To move. Go ahead.
You got a Todd and a Jeff.
Yep. Either order.
All right.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for
Good night.
coming.
Yeah.